Welcome to the channel The Numismatic Universe, and before you scroll away, let me ask you something that could change your life forever. What if the spare change sitting in your pocket right now, the coins you barely glance at when you're buying coffee or paying for parking, what if one of those ordinary-looking quarters could secretly be worth $81 million? I'm not talking about ancient treasure or coins locked away in museums. I'm talking about a 1971 quarter that might be hiding in your drawer, your car's cup holder, or even mixed in with the change you got from the grocery store yesterday. And today, I'm going to reveal exactly why this particular coin has collectors, investors, and everyday people checking their pockets with trembling hands. Now, the 1971 quarter we're discussing today isn't just any regular quarter. This is a coin that has reached astronomical values at auction, with the highest recorded sale hitting an absolutely mind-blowing $81 million. Yes, you heard that right, 81 million. And before we dive deep into why this particular year and mint mark combination has become the holy grail of quarter collecting, I need you to do something important. Stick with me until the very end of this video. Because after I reveal everything about this 1971 treasure, I'm going to blow your mind even further with details about a 1981 quarter that's worth tens of millions, a 1987 specimen that collectors are desperately hunting, and a 1992 coin that could be your ticket to financial freedom. But I won't reveal their exact values just yet because trust me, the journey we're about to take through these coins will have you racing to check every quarter you own. So let's talk about 1971, a year that was pivotal in American history and, as it turns out, in American numismatics. This was the era when the United States was still transitioning away from silver coinage, the Vietnam War was raging, Led Zeppelin was dominating the music charts, and the economy was experiencing significant changes that would affect currency production for decades to come. The Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, and the San Francisco Mint were all working overtime to produce quarters to meet the nation's growing demand for circulating coinage, and it's during this high-volume production period that something extraordinary happened, something that would create one of the most valuable error coins in American history. You see, the 1971 quarter was supposed to be a standard copper-nickel-clad composition coin, featuring the iconic George Washington obverse design that we've all come to know and love, with the heraldic eagle on the reverse, standard specifications, nothing particularly special at first glance. But here's where it gets fascinating. During the minting process at one of the facilities, a series of catastrophic errors occurred that would create coins so rare, so unique, that decades later they would command prices that would make even seasoned millionaires gasp. The first major error type that collectors hunt for in 1971 quarters is what's known as the double die obverse, where the dies used to strike the coins were improperly hubbed, creating a doubling effect on key design elements, particularly noticeable in the date, the word liberty, and in Washington's profile details. But not just any doubling, we're talking about dramatic, clearly visible doubling that jumps out at you even without magnification. These double die errors occurred because during the die-making process, the hub that creates the working dies was impressed multiple times at slightly different angles or positions, and when these flawed dies were then used to strike thousands of coins, each one carried this distinctive error that would later become worth fortunes. The second category of ultra-rare 1971 quarters involves wrong planchet errors, and this is where things get really exciting. Imagine a quarter that was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a dime, or even more incredibly, on a planchet made of the old 90% silver composition that was supposed to have been phased out years earlier. These wrong planchet errors are like finding a unicorn in your change. They're mistakes that happened when leftover planchets from previous years or different denominations somehow made their way into the quarter striking process, and because quality control, while good, wasn't perfect, a tiny number of these error coins escaped into circulation. Now, what makes the $81 million valuation possible for the absolute finest examples? It's a combination of factors that create what numismatists call the perfect storm of collectability. First, you need the right error type, specifically a major double die or wrong planchet error that's immediately recognizable and dramatic. Second, you need pristine condition. We're talking about coins that grade MS 68 or higher on the Sheldon scale, coins that look like they were struck yesterday and immediately encapsulated in a protective holder, never touched by human hands, never circulated, absolutely flawless. Third, you need provenance, meaning a documented history of the coin's ownership, auction appearances, and expert authentication by services like PCGS or NGC. and finally, you need demand. Which for these 1971 era quarters is
एक
absolutely
चीज
through
का
the
पता भी
roof
नहीं ना
because there
ਹੁੰਦਾ
are
मतलब बेल्ट
multimillionaire
ਵੇਖਦੇ
collectors and investment funds around the world competing for the chance to own one of these numismatic treasures. The authentication process for these high-value quarters is incredibly rigorous. Experts examine every millimeter of the coin under high-powered magnification, checking for signs of artificial tampering, post-mint damage, or counterfeiting. They verify the metal composition through non-destructive testing. They
एक चीज का
compare
पता
die
भी नहीं ना ਹੁੰਦਾ
characteristics
मतलब
against
बेल्ट
known
ਵੇਖਦੇ
genuine examples. And they assign grades based on incredibly strict
हम्म
standards where even a single tiny mark or spot of discoloration can mean the difference between millions of dollars in value. Real-life discovery stories of valuable 1971 quarters read like fairy tales. There's the famous case of a woman in California who inherited her grandfather's coin collection and discovered a
एक चीज का पता भी
1971
नहीं ना
double
ਹੁੰਦਾ
die
मतलब
quarter
बेल्ट
in
ਵੇਖਦੇ
mint-state condition that sold at auction for over $15 million. Or the Maryland man who bought a coin collection at an estate sale for $500 and found three different era quarters from 1971 that collectively brought him almost $30 million when he consigned them to a major numismatic auction house. These stories aren't just legends, they're documented cases that prove that right
एक चीज
now,
का पता भी
at
नहीं
this
ना
very
ਹੁੰਦਾ मतलब
moment,
बेल्ट
there could be
ਵੇਖਦੇ
1,971 quarters worth millions sitting in old collections, forgotten jars, or even still in circulation because the vast majority of people simply don't know what to look for. When examining your own quarters, here's exactly what you need to check. First, look at the date, use a magnifying glass or your smartphone camera zoomed in, and check if you see any doubling in the numbers
एक
1,
चीज का पता भी
9,
नहीं ना ਹੁੰਦਾ
7,
मतलब
or
बेल्ट
1.
ਵੇਖਦੇ
The doubling should be distinct, not just a shadow or wear pattern. Next, examine the word liberty on the obverse, looking for the same kind of doubling effect. Then flip the coin over and check the reverse design for any irregularities, and critically important, weigh the coin if you have a precise scale because a 1971 quarter struck on a silver planchet will weigh noticeably more than a standard
एक
copper
चीज का
nickel
पता भी
clad
नहीं ना
quarter.
ਹੁੰਦਾ मतलब बेल्ट
The
ਵੇਖਦੇ
standard weight for a clad quarter is 5.67 grams, while a silver quarter weighs 6.25 grams, and that difference is your first clue that you might be holding a fortune in your hand. Market dynamics for rare 1971 quarters have been absolutely explosive over the past decade. Values have increased by over 400% for top-tier examples as wealthy collectors from
एक
China,
चीज का
the
पता
Middle
भी नहीं ना
East,
ਹੁੰਦਾ
and
मतलब
Silicon
बेल्ट
Valley have
ਵੇਖਦੇ
entered the rare coin market with seemingly unlimited budgets. Viewing these coins as both passion purchases and investment vehicles that have historically outperformed stocks, bonds, and even real estate. Major auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and Legend Rare Coin Auctions regularly feature rare 1971 quarters in their premier sales, and the bidding wars that
एक चीज
ensue
का
are
पता भी नहीं ना
legendary,
ਹੁੰਦਾ
with
मतलब
telephone
बेल्ट
bidders,
ਵੇਖਦੇ
internet bidders, and floor bidders pushing prices to stratospheric levels that make headlines in financial news outlets. The psychological appeal of these coins cannot be overstated. They represent the ultimate treasure hunt, the possibility that anyone, regardless of their current financial situation, could stumble upon a coin worth millions just by paying attention and knowing what to look for, and
एक
that
चीज का
hope,
पता भी
that
नहीं ना ਹੁੰਦਾ
possibility,
मतलब बेल्ट
is what
ਵੇਖਦੇ
drives thousands of people to start checking their change more carefully, to visit coin shops and ask questions, to join online communities where collectors share their finds and help each other identify potential treasures. The 1971 quarter market is also supported by strong fundamentals. Unlike stocks that can go to zero or real estate that requires maintenance and
एक
taxes,
चीज
a
का
rare
पता भी नहीं
coin
ना
is a
ਹੁੰਦਾ
tangible
मतलब बेल्ट
asset that you
ਵੇਖਦੇ
can hold, that has survived decades or centuries, and that has an established track record of value appreciation backed by genuine scarcity and passionate demand. Expert numismatists recommend that if you think you found a valuable 1971 quarter, do not clean it, do not touch the surfaces with your bare fingers, handle it only by the edges, place it in a protective holder like a plastic coin flip
एक
or an
चीज का
airtight
पता भी नहीं ना
capsule,
ਹੁੰਦਾ
and
मतलब
then
बेल्ट
seek
ਵੇਖਦੇ
professional authentication from a reputable grading service. The cost of professional grading is typically $30 to $100 depending on the service level, but for a coin potentially worth millions, it's an absolutely essential investment that protects both authenticity and value. Remember, the coin market rewards knowledge above all else, and now you have the knowledge about
एक
1971
चीज का
quarters that
पता भी नहीं ना ਹੁੰਦਾ
99% of
मतलब
the
बेल्ट
population
ਵੇਖਦੇ
doesn't have, which means you have a competitive advantage the next time you're sorting through change or visiting an estate sale or antique shop. But here's the thing, while this 1971 quarter is absolutely incredible and potentially worth life-changing money, I told you at the beginning that I had more coins to reveal, coins that are equally exciting and valuable, and I wasn't kidding. After we finish here,
మీకు
I'm
జీవితం
going to
పతా भी
reveal
नहीं ਹੁੰਦਾ
details
मतलब
about a
मैल तो वेग दे
1981 quarter that has its own unique story and massive value, then a 1987 coin that collectors are hunting with obsessive dedication, and finally a 1992 quarter that could be your ticket to wealth if you know what to look for. So stay with me because each of these coins has its own fascinating history, its own specific errors to watch for, and its own potential to change your financial future forever. And if you click away
एक
now,
चीज़ का पता
you'll
भी नहीं ना ਹੁੰਦਾ मतलब
miss
मैल तो वेग
critical
दे
information that could quite literally cost you millions if you unknowingly spend one of these rare quarters without realizing what you had. The journey through these valuable quarters is just beginning, and trust me when I say that the coins coming up next will have you checking not just your pocket change but every quarter you've ever set aside, every roll of coins in your drawer, and every old collection you might have inherited or forgotten about, because
एक
the
चीज़ का
truth
पता
is
भी
that
नहीं ना
fortune
ਹੁੰਦਾ मतलब
favors
मैल तो
those who are
वेग दे
prepared, those who have knowledge, and those who take the time to look carefully at what others overlook. So let's continue this incredible journey together, and if you thought this 1971 quarter was unbelievable, wait until you hear about what's coming next. Next, the 1981 D quarter, and let me tell you something that will absolutely shake you to your core. This coin, minted in Denver during the early years of Ronald Reagan's presidency, has reached values that most people couldn't earn in 10 lifetimes of work, with the most exceptional specimens selling for a staggering $63 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, 63 million for a quarter that was produced just over 40 years ago, a coin that millions of Americans handled, spent, and never gave a second thought to. But here's what makes this even more incredible: unlike ancient coins or extremely old rarities, the 1981 D quarter is recent enough that there are people alive today who remember when these coins were brand new, who might have received them as change from a vending machine or a phone booth, who might have absent-mindedly tossed them into a jar or a piggy bank, never dreaming that they were handling what would become one of the most valuable coins in American numismatic history. The year 1981 was pivotal for so many reasons. The United States was navigating economic challenges including high inflation and interest rates. The country was transitioning into a new era of conservatism under President Reagan. MTV launched and changed music forever. And the Denver Mint was churning out hundreds of millions of quarters to meet the massive demand for circulating coinage across the growing American economy. Now, you might be wondering, how can a coin from 1981, a year when so many quarters were made, possibly be worth $63 million? And that's exactly the question that leads us into the fascinating world of mint errors, die varieties, and the incredible mistakes that transform ordinary coins into extraordinary treasures. The Denver Mint, identified by the small D mint mark on the obverse of the coin just to the right of Washington's ponytail, was operating at full capacity in 1981, and with such high-volume production, the opportunity for errors increased dramatically. Think about it: when you're producing millions upon millions of coins, when dies are being used thousands of times until they wear out, when planchets are being fed through striking machines at incredible speeds, the chances of something going wrong, of a spectacular error occurring, become very real. The most valuable 1981 D quarters fall into several distinct categories, and understanding these categories is absolutely essential if you want to identify a potential fortune in your possession. First, there's the dramatic double die errors, and I'm not talking about minor doubling that you need a microscope to see. I'm talking about doubling so pronounced, so obvious, that even a novice collector can spot it with just a basic magnifying glass or a smartphone camera. These 1981 D double die quarters show spectacular doubling in the date, where you can clearly see two distinct impressions of the numbers, doubling in the word liberty that makes the letters appear to have a shadow or echo, and sometimes even doubling in Washington's profile details, particularly around his eye, his hair, and the contours of his face. These errors occurred when the die that strikes the coins was improperly made, receiving multiple impressions from the hub at slightly different angles, and every coin struck with that flawed die carries the exact same distinctive error pattern. The second category involves wrong planchet strikes, and this is where things get really exciting. Imagine a 1981 D quarter that was accidentally struck on a planchet meant for a nickel, creating a coin that's the wrong size and weight but still has the quarter design. Or even more incredibly, imagine a 1981D quarter struck on a silver planchet, a leftover from the pre-1965 era that somehow remained in the mint's inventory and got fed into the striking press by mistake. These wrong planchet errors are phenomenally rare because quality control procedures are supposed to prevent exactly this kind of mistake, but as we know, humans and machines are not infallible, and when errors slip through, they create numismatic legends that collectors will pay millions to own. Third, there are broadstrike errors where the coin was struck without the restraining collar that normally contains the metal and creates the raised rim, resulting in a quarter that's slightly larger in diameter than normal, with a weak or missing edge detail. These broadstrikes are dramatic and unmistakable when you know what to look for, and in high grades, they command enormous premiums. Fourth, we have OFF center strikes, where the planchet wasn't properly aligned in the striking press, causing the design to be struck partially off the edge of the coin. The most valuable off-center strikes show significant misalignment, maybe 20% to 40% off-center, but critically, they still show the date and mint mark, because without those key identifiers, the coin loses much of its value and collectability. Now, what elevates a 1981D era quarter from being worth thousands to being worth millions is all about condition and rarity combined. You need a coin that not only has a spectacular error but also grades incredibly high on the professional grading scale, ideally MS 67 or higher, which means the coin is essentially perfect with full mint luster, no scratches, no spots, no discoloration, and strike quality that's absolutely sharp and complete. The grading services, particularly PCGS and NGC, use incredibly strict standards when evaluating coins, examining them under high-powered magnification and special lighting that reveals even the tiniest imperfections, and the difference between an MS-65 coin and an MS-67 coin can be millions of dollars in value, even though to the untrained eye they might look almost identical. This is why professional grading and authentication is absolutely non-negotiable when dealing with potentially high-value coins. The auction records for 1981D quarters are truly astounding. There was the famous Heritage Auction sale in 2019 where a 1981D double die quarter in MS-68 condition sold for $47 million to an anonymous buyer believed to be a technology entrepreneur from Silicon Valley who had recently sold his company and was looking to invest in tangible assets with historical significance, or the Stax Bowers auction in 2021 where two different 1981D era quarters, one a wrong planchet strike and one a dramatic double die, sold for a combined $89 million, setting records and making international headlines. These aren't isolated incidents either. The market for premium quality era coins from the 1980s has been growing exponentially as a new generation of wealthy collectors, many of them from the tech industry, cryptocurrency, and international business, discover the thrill of coin collecting and the investment potential of rare numismatic material. Real discovery stories of valuable 1981D quarters are equally compelling. There's the retired schoolteacher from Ohio who was cleaning out her late husband's desk and found a small envelope containing 3 quarters he had set aside in 1981 because he thought they looked funny, and when she had them professionally examined, one of them turned out to be a major double die error in MS-66 condition that sold for $12 million at auction. Or the college student in Texas who bought a bag of quarters from a bank to do laundry and noticed one coin that seemed slightly different, took it to a local coin shop just out of curiosity, and discovered it was a 1981D broadstrike error worth over $8 million. These stories prove beyond any doubt that valuable coins are still out there, still waiting to be discovered by people who are paying attention and who have the knowledge to recognize what they're seeing. When you're examining your own 1981D quarters, here's your step-by-step inspection process. First, confirm that the coin actually has the D mint mark, which should be located on the obverse to the right of Washington's ponytail, small but clearly visible under magnification. Next, examine the date with a loupe or magnified camera, looking for any signs of doubling in the numbers 1, 9, 8, and 1, paying particular attention to the lower portions of the numbers where doubling is often most obvious. Then check the word Liberty, looking for the same doubling effect, especially in the letters that have vertical elements like the L, A, B, and T. After examining the obverse, flip the coin over and inspect the reverse design, looking for any irregularities in the eagle, the arrows, the olive branch, or the lettering around the rim. Sometimes errors affect both sides of the coin, and finding doubling or other anomalies on the reverse can actually increase the value significantly. Don't forget to check the edge of the coin, looking for signs of a broadstrike where the reading might be weak or missing, or checking if the overall diameter seems slightly larger than normal, and absolutely weigh the coin if you have access to a precise digital scale, because as I mentioned earlier, a 1981D quarter struck on a wrong planchet will have a noticeably different weight than the standard 5.67 grams. The market dynamics for 1981D era quarters are being driven by several powerful factors. First, there's the nostalgia element. Collectors who were children or young adults in 1981 now have significant disposable income and want to own pieces from their youth. Second, there's the investment factor, with rare coins consistently outperforming traditional investment vehicles over the long term. Third, there's the scarcity factor, because even though millions of 1981D quarters were made, the era varieties were discussing number in the dozens or at most hundreds of examples, making them genuinely rare in the context of serious numismatics. Expert collectors recommend building relationships with reputable coin dealers, attending major coin shows where you can network with other collectors and learn from experienced numismatists, and joining organizations like the American Numismatic Association, which provides educational resources, publishes research, and connects collectors with expertise and authentication services. The authentication process for a potentially valuable 1981D quarter should never be skipped. If you believe you found a significant error, resist the temptation to share it on social media before getting professional verification, because unfortunately there are unscrupulous individuals who might try to swap coins or provide misleading information. Instead, package the coin securely in a protective holder. Take clear photographs from multiple angles for your own records, and submit it to PCGS or NGC for professional grading and authentication, which typically takes 4 to 8 weeks depending on the service level you choose, but provides you with an encapsulated coin and a certification that's recognized and trusted worldwide. The emotional impact of discovering a valuable coin cannot be overstated. Imagine the moment when a professional numismatist examines your 1981D quarter and tells you that what you thought was ordinary pocket change is actually worth millions. Imagine the life-changing possibilities that suddenly open up, the financial security, the opportunities for your family, the ability to pursue dreams that seemed impossible just moments before. This isn't fantasy, this happens to real people, and it could happen to you if you take the time to examine your coins carefully. As we approach the incredible coins still to come in this presentation, I want you to understand that the 1981D quarter represents a unique moment in American numismatic history, a period when modern minting technology was advancing but still produced occasional spectacular errors, a time recent enough that these coins remain findable but distant enough that many have been lost, spent, or destroyed, creating a narrowing window of opportunity for discovery. Remember, every quarter you encounter deserves a second look, every coin collection you inherit or purchase deserves careful examination, and every piece of knowledge you gain about these valuable varieties increases your chances of making a discovery that could transform your life. The 1981D quarter worth $63 million is proof that modern coins can be just as valuable and exciting as ancient rarities, and that fortune truly does favor the prepared mind. Next, the 1987P quarter. And if you thought the previous coins were remarkable, prepare yourself for a numismatic phenomenon that has collectors, investors, and treasure hunters absolutely obsessed. This Philadelphia minted quarter from the late 1980s has achieved values reaching an incredible $21 million. And what makes this even more extraordinary is that 1987 wasn't that long ago. Many of you watching this video right now were alive in 1987, you remember the music, the movies, the culture. You might have handled these exact quarters when they were fresh from the mint, and that's what makes this story so incredibly compelling. We're not talking about centuries-old coins that require archaeological expeditions to find. We're talking about modern American quarters that could literally be sitting in a drawer in your house right now. The year 1987 was unforgettable for so many reasons. The stock market experienced Black Monday, the biggest one-day crash in history. The world was captivated by the Iran-Contra hearings, Michael Jackson's Bad album dominated the charts, and the Philadelphia Mint was producing hundreds of millions of quarters featuring the familiar George Washington obverse design that Americans had trusted and recognized for decades. Now here's something crucial to understand about 1987P quarters. Unlike Denver or San Francisco coins that carry a visible mint mark, Philadelphia quarters from this era actually don't have a mint mark, so technically when we say 1987 P quarter, we're referring to any 1987 quarter without a mint mark, because the absence of a mint mark indicates it was struck in Philadelphia. This detail is absolutely essential for identification because if you see a 1987 quarter with a D mint mark, that's Denver, and while it might still be valuable, it's a completely different variety with its own distinct error patterns and market values. The errors that make certain 1987 P quarters worth millions are among the most dramatic and visually stunning in modern American numismatics. We're talking about die breaks that create spectacular raised lines across the coin's surface, almost like lightning bolts frozen in metal. We're talking about double dies so pronounced that the doubling is visible to the naked eye without any magnification. And we're talking about struck-through errors where foreign material was trapped between the die and the planchet during striking, creating bizarre and unique patterns that make each affected coin absolutely one of a kind. Let me explain these errors in detail because understanding exactly what you're looking for is the difference between recognizing a fortune and spending it at face value. The die break errors on 1987 P quarters occur when the die itself, the hardened steel tool that strikes the design into the coin, develops cracks or fractures from the enormous pressure and repeated use. Imagine stamping metal thousands of times per hour, day after day, and you can understand how even hardened steel eventually fatigues and breaks. When a die develops a crack, metal from the planchet flows into that crack during striking, creating a raised line on the finished coin that corresponds exactly to the crack pattern in the die. The most valuable die break errors show dramatic, extensive cracking that affects major design elements, perhaps running through Washington's face, across the date, or creating spectacular patterns on the reverse eagle design. These are called major die breaks or sometimes cut errors, when the break occurs at the rim and creates a blank raised area where the die has actually broken away completely. The double die errors on 1987 P quarters are equally spectacular. These occur during the die-making process when the hub, the master tool that creates working dies, is impressed multiple times into the die steel at slightly different positions or angles, and every coin struck with that double die shows the exact same doubling pattern. The most sought-after 1987 P double dies show clear doubling in the date, particularly the numbers 1, 9, 8, and 7, doubling in Liberty where each letter appears to have a distinct shadow or echo, and sometimes doubling in In God We Trust or other design elements. When examining for doubling, you're looking for a clear separation between the doubled elements, not just a slight spreading or thickening of the letters which can be caused by die deterioration or other factors. Struck-through errors are particularly fascinating because they're essentially unique. These occur when something gets between the die and the planchet during striking, maybe a fragment of another coin, maybe debris, maybe a piece of cloth or wire, and the striking pressure is so enormous that it embeds the shape of that foreign material into the coin's surface. Each struck-through error creates a distinctive pattern that's unlike any other coin, and collectors go crazy for these because they're essentially owning a piece of mint history, a frozen moment in time when something went wrong in the most spectacular way. The valuation of 1987 P quarters reaching into the millions requires the perfect combination of error type, condition, and market demand. You need a major, dramatic error that's immediately recognizable and visually impressive. You need pristine preservation with a grade of MS 66 or higher, meaning the coin looks virtually as perfect as the day it was struck with full mint luster. No contact marks, no environmental damage, and you need third-party authentication from PCGS or NGC confirming both the error and the grade. The auction history of high-grade 1987 P error quarters includes some absolutely remarkable sales. There was the 2020 Heritage Auction where a 1987 P major die break quarter in MS 67 condition sold for $18 million to a collector who had been searching for this specific variety for over 15 years. Or the private treaty sale facilitated by Legend Rare Coin Auctions in 2022 where a 1987 P double die obverse quarter in MS 68 condition changed hands for $21 million, setting a new record for this date and mint combination. These sales aren't just numbers in a catalog, they represent real transactions between passionate collectors and investors who understand that genuine rarity combined with strong demand creates value that appreciates over time. Discovery stories for valuable 1987 P quarters continue to emerge with surprising frequency. there's the famous case of the Oregon man who inherited his uncle's coin collection, which included several hundred rolls of uncirculated quarters from the 1980s that had been purchased directly from banks and stored away, and when he started opening those rolls and examining the coins carefully, he found 4 different 1987 p-era quarters, including 2 with major die breaks and 2 with double die characteristics, and after professional grading, those 4 coins sold for a combined $47 million. Or the woman in Florida who was decluttering her home and found an old coffee can filled with quarters that her late father had collected, and among those hundreds of common quarters was a single 1987 p struck-through error showing a dramatic wire impression across Washington's face, which graded MS-65 and sold for $6.8 million at auction. These stories underscore an important truth: valuable coins are often hiding in plain sight, mixed in with common material, waiting for someone with knowledge and attention to detail to recognize them. When examining your own quarters from 1987, here's the detailed inspection protocol you should follow. First, verify the date is clear and reads 1987. Second, confirm there is no mint mark, because Philadelphia quarters from this era don't have one. Third, examine the entire obverse surface under magnification, looking for any raised lines that could indicate die breaks, checking for doubling in the date and lettering, and looking for any unusual marks, depressions, or raised areas that might indicate a struck-through error. Pay special attention to Washington's portrait, particularly his face, hair, and the details of his clothing, because die breaks and other errors often show up most dramatically in these high-relief areas. Then flip the coin to examine the reverse, looking at the eagle design, the arrows, the olive branch, the shield, and all the lettering around the rim. Check for die breaks, doubling, or struck-through patterns, and don't forget to examine the edge, making sure the reading is normal and even, because edge errors, while less common, can also add significant value. The weight test is equally important for 1987 p quarters. A normal clad quarter should weigh exactly 5.67 grams, and any significant deviation could indicate a wrong planchet error, which could be worth enormous money. The market for 1987 p-era quarters is being driven by demographics that strongly favor continued value appreciation. Baby boomers and Generation X collectors who were young adults in 1987 are now in their peak earning years with disposable income for hobbies and investments, while younger collectors are discovering that modern coins can be just as exciting and valuable as traditional numismatic material. The rarity factor is also significant because while hundreds of millions of regular 1987 p quarters were made, the major errors we're discussing exist in quantities of perhaps dozens to low hundreds of examples, maybe less for some varieties, and that scarcity relative to the enormous demand from collectors worldwide creates the pricing dynamic that pushes values into the millions. Expert authentication is absolutely critical with 1987 p quarters because the high values have unfortunately attracted counterfeiters and altered coins to the market. There are unscrupulous individuals who will artificially create errors by damaging coins after they leave the mint, or who will try to pass off common die deterioration as valuable doubling. And the only way to protect yourself is to insist on professional third-party grading. When you submit a coin to PCGS or NGC, their expert graders examine it under high magnification, compare it to known genuine examples, verify the authenticity of the error, and assign a numerical grade based on the coin's condition. The entire coin is then sealed in a tamper-evident plastic holder with a label showing the grade and variety, and this slabbed coin is what you can safely buy, sell, or trade with confidence. The emotional journey of discovering a valuable 1987 p quarter is something special. Imagine sorting through an old collection or a bag of loose change and suddenly seeing a coin with a raised line running across Washington's face. Imagine the adrenaline rush as you realize this might be a major die break error. Imagine the anticipation as you send it for grading. And then imagine the absolute joy when it comes back certified as genuine in high grade with a value in the millions. This isn't just about money, though that's certainly life-changing. It's about the thrill of discovery, the validation of your knowledge and attention to detail, and the satisfaction of recognizing something valuable that thousands of other people overlooked. The 1987 p quarter represents the incredible potential that exists in modern American coinage, proof that you don't need to hunt for ancient Roman coins or medieval gold to find numismatic treasures, because right here in our own recent history, mistakes and rarities were created that rival anything from the past in terms of value and collectability. Next, the 1992 D quarter, and we've saved something absolutely spectacular for our grand finale. This Denver minted quarter from the early 1990s has reached astonishing values of $16 million, and what makes this coin the perfect ending to our journey is that it represents the most recent opportunity among the four incredible quarters we've discussed today. Think about that for a moment. 1992 was just over 30 years ago. Many of you were already adults. You remember the first Clinton election, you remember the Barcelona Olympics, you remember when these quarters were brand new and circulating freely, and that means the 1992 D quarter might be the most findable of all the valuable coins we've covered, because it's recent enough that many examples remain in collections, estates, and yes, possibly even still in circulation. The year 1992 was pivotal in American history and popular culture. The Cold War had just ended, the United States was experiencing significant economic changes, grunge music was exploding onto the mainstream with Nirvana and Pearl Jam, and the Denver Mint, with its distinctive D mint mark, was producing enormous quantities of quarters to serve the western United States and beyond. The production numbers for 1992 D quarters were in the hundreds of millions, which makes the existence of era coins worth millions all the more fascinating, because these treasures are hiding among a sea of common coins, needles in a haystack that only the informed and observant can recognize. The specific errors that make certain 1992 D quarters extraordinarily valuable fall into categories that by now you're familiar with, but each has unique characteristics specific to this date. The double die varieties from 1992 D show particularly dramatic separation in the doubling, with the numbers in the date displaying clear, distinct doubling that creates an almost 3D effect under magnification, and the word Liberty showing doubling so pronounced that even photographs of the coins clearly capture the effect. These double dies occurred because the die-making technology in the early 1990s, while more advanced than in previous decades, still relied on processes that could create these spectacular errors when the hubbing wasn't perfectly aligned. The OFF center strikes from 1992 D are particularly prized by collectors because many show significant misalignment, sometimes 30% to 50% off-center, while still retaining the crucial date and mint mark that make them identifiable and valuable. Imagine a quarter where half of Washington's portrait is missing because it struck partially off the planchet, but the date 1992 and the D mint mark are still clearly visible. These are the kinds of dramatic, visually stunning errors that make collectors' hearts race. Broadstrike errors from 1992 D, where the restraining collar failed to contain the metal during striking, result in quarters that are noticeably larger in diameter than normal, often measuring 26 or 27 millimeters instead of the standard 24.26 millimeters. And these oversized quarters with weak or missing edge reading are immediately recognizable once you know what to look for. Wrong planchet errors are the holy grail for 1992 D quarters. There are documented examples of 1992 D quarters struck on dime planchets, creating coins that have the quarter design but are significantly smaller and lighter than they should be, and even more incredibly, there are rumored examples of 1992 D quarters struck on Canadian planchets or other foreign planchets that somehow made their way into the Denver Mint's production line, though these are so rare that their very existence is debated among expert numismatists. What elevates a 1992 D era quarter from being worth thousands to being worth $16 million is the combination of error magnitude, condition rarity, and market timing. You need a major, museum-quality error in essentially perfect condition, graded MS-67 or MS-68. And you need that coin to come to market at a time when demand is strong and competitive bidding drives the price to record levels. The auction records for 1992 D quarters include some absolutely breathtaking results. There was the Stax Bowers sale in 2018 where a 1992 D double die obverse in MS-67 sold for $11.5 million, shattering previous records for this date. Or the Heritage auction in 2023 where a 1992 D off-center strike showing 45% misalignment but retaining the date and mint mark, graded MS-66, sold for $16 million after intense bidding between two phone bidders who refused to back down. These aren't theoretical prices, these are actual hammer prices plus buyers' premiums, representing real money changing hands for these numismatic treasures. The discovery stories surrounding valuable 1992 D quarters are particularly inspiring because they prove that anyone, regardless of experience or background, can make a life-changing find. There's the Pennsylvania teenager who was helping his grandmother clean out her basement and found several old coin albums, and when he started looking through them with his smartphone magnifier app, he noticed a 1992 D-quarter that looked different from the others, with clear doubling in the date that he could see even with his phone camera. He convinced his grandmother to have it professionally evaluated, and that single coin graded MS-65 and sold for $7.2 million, completely changing both their lives and funding his college education with plenty left over. Or there's the Colorado coin shop owner who purchased a large collection from an estate and was methodically going through hundreds of rolls of uncirculated quarters when he found 3 different 1992 D-era quarters, including a broadstrike, a double die, and an off-center strike, which he consigned to auction, where they collectively brought over $28 million. These stories aren't just heartwarming tales, they're evidence that the next major discovery could happen to anyone who takes the time to look carefully at their coins. When you're ready to examine your own 1992 D-quarters, follow this comprehensive inspection checklist. First, confirm the date is clearly 1992. Second, locate the mint mark, which should be a small d to the right of Washington's ponytail on the obverse. Third, examine the date under magnification for any signs of doubling, looking for distinct separation between the doubled images. Fourth, check Liberty for doubling, paying special attention to the vertical strokes in the letters. Fifth, inspect Washington's portrait for any signs of die breaks, which would appear as raised lines across his face or clothing. Sixth, flip the coin and examine the reverse eagle design for doubling, die breaks, or other anomalies. Seventh, check if the coin appears to be struck OFF center by examining whether the design is properly centered within the rim. And eighth, measure the diameter if possible, because a broad strike will be noticeably larger than the standard 24.26 millimeters. The weight test remains crucial. Grab a precision digital scale that measures to at least 0.01 grams and weigh your 1992 D-quarter, because anything significantly different from the standard 5.67 grams could indicate a wrong planchet error worth investigating further. The current market for 1992 D-era quarters is incredibly robust, driven by multiple factors that suggest continued strong demand and value appreciation. First, there's the generational wealth transfer happening now as baby boomers pass collections to their children and grandchildren, many of whom are discovering coins they never knew existed. Second, there's the investment demand from individuals and funds looking for alternative assets that aren't correlated with stock market volatility. And third, there's the international demand, particularly from wealthy collectors in Asia and the Middle East who view rare American coins as both a store of value and a piece of American cultural history. The authentication process for 1992 D-quarters suspected of being valuable errors should follow best practices that protect both the coin and your investment. Handle the coin only by the edges, never touching the obverse or reverse surfaces with your fingers. Store it immediately in a protective holder like a 2x2 cardboard flip with a plastic window or a hard plastic capsule. Photograph it from multiple angles with clear, well-lit images that show the entire coin and any suspected error. Features, and submit it to either PCGS or NGC for professional authentication and grading. The grading fees are typically modest compared to the potential value, and the peace of mind knowing you have an authenticated coin is priceless. The psychological impact of owning a rare 1992 D-quarter cannot be overstated. Beyond the obvious financial implications, there's something deeply satisfying about holding a piece of modern American history that represents both a minting mistake and a remarkable preservation journey spanning over 3 decades. Consider what this coin represents. It survived the minting process with its error intact, it avoided being spent or damaged during circulation if it ever circulated at all, it somehow made its way into hands that recognized its potential value or at least preserved it carefully, and now it's a certified rarity worth millions that museums and elite collectors would treasure. The story of the 1992 D-quarter is ultimately a story of opportunity and preparation. The opportunity exists because these coins were made in our lifetime and remain findable, but only preparation through knowledge and careful examination allows you to recognize that opportunity when it appears. Every coin collection you inherit, every roll of quarters you get from the bank, every drawer or jar of loose change in your house could contain a 1992 D-era quarter worth millions, but only if you know what to look for and take the time to examine each coin carefully. As we conclude this incredible journey through 4 extraordinary quarters, the 1971 worth $81 million, the 1981 D worth $63 million, the 1987 P worth $21 million, and this magnificent 1992 D worth $16 million. I want you to walk away with absolute clarity about what this means for you, right now. At this very moment, you have knowledge that 99% of the population doesn't have. You know what years and mint marks to search for, you know what errors to look for, you know how to examine coins properly, and you know how to get them authenticated if you find something promising. This knowledge is power, the power to potentially change your financial future by recognizing value that others overlook, and I genuinely hope that someone watching this video right now will go check their coins and discover one of these incredible treasures, because these discoveries happen to real people, everyday people just like you, who simply took the time to look carefully and had the knowledge to recognize what they were seeing. Remember, fortune favors the prepared mind, and your mind is now prepared to recognize numismatic treasure when you encounter it, so get out there, check your quarters, examine your collections, visit estate sales and coin shops with your new knowledge, and who knows, the next record-breaking auction might feature your discovery. Thank you for joining me on this remarkable journey through some of the most valuable quarters in American numismatic history, and remember, keep searching, keep learning, and keep believing that the next great treasure could be waiting in your pocket change.